Let's put your nursing knowledge to the test. Ready? In this back-to-school nursing student quiz challenge, we'll review some of the highest yield topics every nursing student should know before heading back to class. We'll start with the fundamentals and work our way up through 5 levels of difficulty: super easy, easy, intermediate, hard, and super hard. Across 15 questions, you'll tackle key concepts in patient assessment, medication safety, ECG interpretation, laboratory values, infection prevention, diabetes care, respiratory assessment, pharmacology, ABG interpretation, and clinical judgment. Each question is worth between 1 and 5 stars, depending on the difficulty level. You'll have a few moments to think before we reveal the correct answer, along with a brief explanation from Lecturio's nursing content. Keep track of your stars as you go, challenge your classmates, and discover which topics you've mastered and which ones deserve a quick review. Let's get started. What is the normal resting heart rate range for a healthy adult? A normal resting heart rate for healthy adults ranges from 60 to 100 beats per minute. Rates below or above this range may be normal in certain situations, such as in well-trained athletes or during exercise. But they can also indicate an underlying condition depending on the patient's symptoms and clinical context. Keep normal vital signs and reference ranges at your fingertips with our free cheat sheet. Download it using the link in the description. Which heart chamber receives oxygenated blood from the lungs?
Now let's switch around to the left side and look at the left atrium and ventricles. So here we see the pulmonary veins entering into the left atrium after having just got oxygenated blood from the lungs. And here we have a mitral valve. It looks similar to the tricuspid valve, except instead of 3 cusps, we have 2. We still have chorda tendineae and we still have papillary muscles, but we only have 2, the anterior and posterior sides.
Which is not included in the 5 rights of medication administration.
First of all, you want to make sure before you give the medication that you have the right drug. Next, it's for the right patient. You have the right dose. You're giving it by the right route, and you're giving it at the right time.
What does the P wave represent in an ECG?
Let's take a look at what are the basic components of an ECG strip. If you take a look at a classic ECG strip, you'll see that it's comprised of many curves. Now, each of these curves represents a part of the cardiac cycle. Take a look at this pumping heart. The electrical impulse travels from the atria to the ventricles. Now, its pathway and the effects that it has on the cardiac muscle as it passes through is what's reflected on the ECG strip. The impulse originates in the sinoatrial or SA node. It disperses through the left and right atria, causing their contraction. Now, this is what's reflected in the ECG as the P wave.
In a complete blood count, which component primarily reflects the blood's capacity to carry oxygen to tissues?
Now, the job of the red blood cells, like we said, is to carry oxygen. That's why we want to look closely at another value on a CBC, the H and H, or the hemoglobin and hematocrit. So when you hear someone refer to an H and H, that's what they're talking about, hemoglobin and hematocrit. Now, why we care about that is because hemoglobin is the oxygen-carrying protein in the red blood cells.
Which of the following practices is key in standard precautions for preventing infection transmission in healthcare settings?
Hand hygiene is a major component of standard precautions and one of the most effective methods to prevent the transmission of pathogens associated with healthcare.
Which treatment is appropriate for severe hypoglycemia when the patient cannot safely swallow?
Now, a severe hypoglycemia, this is not going to be fixed with a carbohydrate snack or the patient is unable to swallow. We can use IV or we can use a sub-Q. Let me talk about the differences. IV glucose will raise the glucose immediately, but you can only use that in a hospital setting. So IV, you already know absorption, there isn't any. If absorption is the route of entry to the bloodstream, with IV administration, we put it right in the bloodstream. So glucose, boom, that's raised immediately, but it's not available for home use. Now, sub-Q glucagon, hey, that sounds familiar. Glucagon, that's like that hormone in my pancreas that raises my blood sugar. Exactly. Now this sub-Q takes about 20 minutes for a response. You can use it at home and it encourages the glycogen breakdown in the liver. Now you're going to need food when you can swallow, when that blood sugar starts to raise up, to keep that blood sugar normal and stable, but it'll take about 20 minutes for that sub-Q glucagon to kick in.
While auscultating a patient's lungs during an asthma attack, which abnormal breath sound would most likely be heard?
Now you notice wheezing when breathing, and especially on exhale. So, that's really not a great impersonation, but it kind of gives you a feel. But particularly on breathing out or exhale is when you hear that wheezing.
A dehydrated patient's labs reveal elevated sodium levels. Which type of electrolyte imbalance is this, and why is it a concern?
Hypertonic dehydration, excessive sweating can also cause this. Very poor fluid intake can cause this. Vomiting can cause this. So notice that the causes can be similar. It really comes back to how much sodium you're losing. But in hypertonic dehydration, the sodium loss is less than the water loss. So the sodium levels in your body rise, and that gives you hypernatremia. So the important thing for you guys to know is to know that hypertonic dehydration means that there's hypernatremia, that sodium is too high. So you can expect there to be some extra water added into the regimen at some point.
A patient's arterial blood gas shows a pH of 7.25, CO2 of 55 millimeters of mercury, and HCO 3 of 22 milliequivalents per liter. What acid-base imbalance does this indicate?
pH of 7.25 is lower than the normal pH of 7.35, so we labeled it acidotic. Now, CO2 of 55 is more than normal, right? Because the normal CO2 level is 35 to 45. So we labeled that acidotic because we have excess CO2 in the blood or extra acid. Now, a bicarb of 22, bingo, that's right in the line, right? It's 22 to 26, so we're still within normal. So we labeled the pH acidotic, we labeled the CO2 acidotic, because step 4, you do the pH matchup. We know it's CO2 is the problem, and lungs control the CO2. So this patient is in respiratory acidosis. The pH told us where we are, acidosis. Whose fault it is the lungs, because the lungs control the CO2 levels. So we're in respiratory acidosis.
Upon auscultation, which heart sound is described as a third heart sound or ventricular Gallup? and is often indicative of volume overload and heart failure.
First off, heart failure. You're definitely going to come across patients with acute decompensated heart failure, with whether systolic or diastolic or mixed in nature. And a few cardinal features can really help us. We already talked about the third heart sound, the S3, which again we're going to appreciate with the bell of the stethoscope in the left lateral decubitus position at the apex.
Which commonly used medication is classified as a high alert drug due to its risk of causing potentially severe hypoglycemia if dosed improperly.
For some reason, my body's not making enough insulin, or I'm not sensitive to it anymore, and I've got to go on insulin that's administered sub-Q, we might give it IV in the hospital. This is a medication that is used to control blood sugar for people who are diabetic. Now here is the deal. The biggest risk of insulin, we think, well, maybe it's high blood sugar because they're diabetic. No. The biggest risk with insulin is hypoglycemia. So if for some reason the patient gets an inappropriate dose of insulin, the wrong kind of insulin, has a different peak onset duration, whatever the error was, type, amount, dosage, kind, whatever, the biggest risk is hypoglycemia. So the hypoglycemic risk is present with both subcutaneous and IV routes.
A nurse receives report on 4 patients. Which patient should be assessed first based on urgency? Sudden chest pain accompanied by shortness of breath may indicate a life-threatening condition such as acute coronary syndrome, pulmonary embolism, or aortic dissection. Following NCLEX prioritization principles such as the ABCs, this patient requires immediate assessment to identify and treat potentially unstable airway, breathing, or circulation problems.
The nurse is caring for clients diagnosed with liver cirrhosis. Which client does the nurse need to see first? This is another one of those prioritization questions. Think of it like a triage question. They're trying to test if you recognize who's in the most danger. Remember, everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone will be seen. They're just wanting to test if you can triage or recognize who's in the most danger and requires the most immediate intervention. Now, that doesn't mean that any one of these patients are going to die. It just means, compared to the other patients, who should be your first priority.
A diabetic patient becomes confused, pale, and diaphoretic with a blood glucose reading of 50 milligrams per deciliter. The patient is conscious and able to swallow. What is the nurse's immediate action? A conscious patient with symptomatic hypoglycemia, blood glucose less than 70 milligrams per deciliter, who can safely swallow, should receive 15 to 20 grams of fast-acting oral glucose immediately. Prompt treatment restores blood glucose levels and helps prevent progression to severe hypoglycemia, seizures, or loss of consciousness. A patient with COPD on 2 liters per minute, oxygen complains of increased fatigue and dyspnea. ABGs show pH 7.30, PaCO 255 millimeters of mercury, HCO 328 milliequivalents per liter. What is the best nursing action? The ABGs indicate respiratory acidosis with hypercapnia, suggesting the patient is not ventilating effectively despite oxygen therapy. Worsening fatigue and dyspnea may signal impending respiratory failure, so the nurse should notify the provider immediately and prepare for possible ventilatory support rather than simply adjusting oxygen or monitoring. And that's a wrap. How many stars did you earn? Whether you breezed through the basics or conquered the super hard questions, every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen your medical knowledge and clinical reasoning. Keep building your foundation with Lecturio, your all-in-one learning platform for mastering medical school, board exams, and clinical practice. Drop your score in the comments and tell us, which topic should we cover in the next quiz challenge?